The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly across the polished floor, his four legs clicking against the crystal surface. In his clawed hand, he held a small device that would change everything. The chamber was huge, bigger than most human cities. Representatives from hundreds of alien species sat in floating pods that moved gently through the air. Some looked like giant insects with shimmering wings. Others were made of what seemed like living metal that shifted and changed color. A few were just balls of light that pulsed with different colors when they spoke. At the center of it all sat High Chancellor Mordoun. He was old, even by his species standards. His skin was pale blue and covered in intricate patterns that showed his rank. His 6 eyes focused on the small human device in Zethkar's hand. "You have brought their response?" Mordoun asked. His voice echoed through the chamber even though he spoke quietly. Zethkar nodded and placed the device on the speaking platform. A hologram appeared showing Captain Jake Morrison standing on the bridge of the human ship UHS Independence. Behind him, Lieutenant Lisa Harper worked at a control panel covered in blinking lights. Jake looked tired. His uniform was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He had been awake for 3 days straight, talking with Earth's leaders about what to do. The decision had not been easy. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Jake began, his voice steady despite his exhaustion, "humanity has considered your offer carefully. We appreciate the opportunity to join your great civilization." The alien representatives leaned forward in their floating pods. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Every species in the galaxy had gone through this same process. The Council would offer membership, protection, and advanced technology. In return, the new species would follow Council laws and accept Council guidance in all matters. It was a fair deal. The galaxy was dangerous. Pirates roamed the empty spaces between stars. Strange creatures lived in the dark corners of space. Wars between species could destroy entire planets. The Council kept the peace and made sure everyone was safe. Jake continued speaking. "However, after much discussion with our leaders on Earth and our colonies, we must respectfully decline your generous offer." The chamber fell completely silent. Not a single alien moved or made a sound. Even the floating pods stopped their gentle motion. Council member Veltara of the Crystalline Dominion was the first to react. She was tall and thin, made of what looked like living glass. When she was surprised or angry, lights flashed inside her crystal body. Right now those lights were flashing very quickly. "Decline?" she asked, her voice making a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Did the translation device malfunction? Surely they mean to accept with conditions. But Jake shook his head. "No, there is no mistake. Humanity chooses to remain independent. We will find our own path among the stars." The hologram flickered as Jake's image disappeared. The chamber exploded with noise as hundreds of alien voices spoke at once. Some representatives were angry, others confused. A few seemed scared. High Chancellor Mordoun raised one of his hands, and the chamber became quiet again. "In 3,000 years, he said slowly, no species has ever rejected Council membership. Every civilization that enters space eventually joins us. It is the natural order of things." He turned to his advisors, a group of floating creatures that looked like jellyfish made of light. They whispered to him in a language that sounded like music mixed with static from an old radio. "The humans do not understand," Mordoun continued. "They are young and foolish. They think they can survive alone, but they are wrong. Space is vast and full of dangers. Without our protection, they will be destroyed within a few years." On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Chris Bennett stood on the bridge of the human flagship UHS Defiance. Through the large windows, he could see 12 other human ships floating in formation. They were not as big or advanced as Council vessels, but they were built with human determination and creativity. "Admiral," said Colonel Amy Rodriguez as she approached. She was in charge of coordinating defenses for all human colonies. "We're receiving messages from our outer settlements. Council ships are already moving toward our borders." Chris nodded. He had expected this. The Council did not like to be told no. How long before they reach our first colony? 3 days, sir. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. Chris looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives. They worked in factories, taught children in schools, and dreamed of exploring new worlds. Most of them had no idea that their entire future hung in the balance. Send a message to all human ships, Chris ordered. Tell them we knew this day would come. We prepared for it. Now we find out if we were right to believe in ourselves. Back, in the council chamber, the debate continued. Some representatives wanted to send ships immediately to force human compliance. Others suggested economic pressure or diplomatic isolation. Perhaps we are approaching this wrong, said a voice from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Advisor Quill of the Peaceful Union, a group of species that preferred talking to fighting. Maybe we should ask why they refused. What do the humans want that we cannot provide? High Chancellor Morden's 6 eyes narrowed. It does not matter what they want. What matters is that they have disrupted the order we have maintained for millennia. If other species see that the humans can refuse us and survive, they might try to do the same. The truth was more frightening than Morden wanted to admit. The Council's power depended on every species believing they needed protection and guidance. If the humans could make it alone, other species might start asking uncomfortable questions about why they needed the Council at all. Prepare the fleets, Morden ordered. The humans will learn that independence is an illusion. They will join us willingly, or they will join us by force. As the council session ended, and the representatives returned to their ships, none of them realized they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The humans were not like other species. They did not give up when things got difficult. They did not surrender when the odds were against them. They got angry, and angry. Humans were the most dangerous force in the universe. Dr. Kevin Taylor rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the data screen again. He had been studying alien technology for 6 months, ever since the first council ships had visited Earth. What he found made him sick to his stomach. Captain Martinez, he called across the laboratory aboard the research ship, UHS Discovery. You need to see this. Captain Laura Martinez walked over, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. What did you find, Kevin? Kevin pointed to a series of charts and graphs on his screen. I've been analyzing the technology samples the council gave us. Look at these energy readings. Laura studied the data but could not make sense of the numbers and symbols. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. Their weapons are designed to look impressive, but they're actually weak, Kevin said. These energy beams they're so proud of. A simple steel plate can stop most of them. Their shields are strong against energy attacks, but they've never had to deal with good old-fashioned bullets and missiles. Laura felt a smile creep across her face. Are you telling me that our primitive weapons might actually work better than theirs? Not might. Will. Kevin pulled up another screen. They've been using the same basic technology for thousands of years. They never had to innovate because nobody ever fought back. Meanwhile, we humans have been fighting each other for our entire history. We got really good at finding new ways to break things. Across the solar system, Commander Ryan Phillips sat in his command chair aboard the battleship UHS Patriot. A communication came in from Earth that made him stand up so fast he nearly fell over. Sir? Asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Green. What's the message? Ryan looked at the other officers on the bridge. These were good people who had signed up to explore the stars and defend humanity. Now they might have to fight the entire galaxy. President Warren has authorized Protocol 7, Ryan announced. All contact with Council species is to be cut off immediately. Trade agreements are canceled. Diplomatic meetings are over. We're going it alone. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Protocol 7 had been created as a last resort plan. Nobody ever thought they would actually use it. What about Captain Lee's merchant ships? Asked Lieutenant Green. They're scattered across 20 different systems, trading with alien species. Send them the recall code, Ryan ordered. All human ships are to return to human space within 48 hours. Anyone who doesn't make it back in time will have to hide until we can mount a rescue mission. On the planet New Boston, In the Kepler system, Captain Danny Lee received the recall message while loading his cargo ship with rare minerals. The alien dock workers were friendly creatures that looked like purple bears with extra arms. They had been trading with humans for months and seemed to genuinely like working with them. "I'm sorry, Grek," Danny said to the alien foreman. "I have to leave right now. Emergency orders from Earth." Grak's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, which was how his species showed confusion. "Is there a problem, friend Danny? Did we do something wrong?" Danny felt bad about lying, but he could not tell the aliens what was really happening. "No, you did nothing wrong. Family emergency. I have to go home." As Danny's ship lifted off from the planet's surface, he looked down at the mining colony below. The aliens had been fair in their deals and honest in their work. It was not their fault that their government wanted to control humanity. Back on Earth, Senator Patricia Moore sat in a secure bunker deep underground. Around her, intelligence officers worked at computer terminals, gathering information from across the galaxy. What they had learned was both frightening and encouraging. "Tell me about the Council's weaknesses," Patricia said to her chief analyst, Major Tom Baker. Tom brought up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Different colored dots marked various alien species and their territories. "The Council looks strong on the surface, but they have serious problems. 17 of their member species depend on resources that only come from human colonies." Patricia leaned forward. "What kind of resources?" "Iron, mostly. Also rare earth elements that we use in our electronics. The really important thing is quantum crystals. Humans are the only species that knows how to mine them safely." "Why is that important?" "Because quantum crystals power their communication systems. Without them, the Council can't coordinate their fleets across the galaxy. Their ships would be isolated, unable to work together." Patricia smiled. It was not a nice smile. "So if we cut off their supply of crystals, their entire command structure falls apart?" "Exactly. They've been so dependent on our mining operations that they never developed alternatives. It's like they put all their eggs in one basket, and we're holding the basket." Meanwhile, on the Council homeworld of Nexus Prime, economic advisors were having emergency meetings. The Ethereal Collective, beings made of pure thought that normally stayed calm in any situation, were actually showing signs of panic. Unit Prime 77 of the Mechanical Syndicate presented his calculations to the Emergency Council session. He was a robot, but not like the simple machines humans built. He was an artificial intelligence that had been alive for over 1,000 years. "The economic impact will be severe," Unit Prime 77 reported in his mechanical voice. "Human colonies provide 34.7% of our raw materials and 67.2% of our rare element supplies. Factory worlds will begin shutting down within 30 days. High Chancellor Mordun struck his fist against his chair. "How did we become so dependent on one species? We have hundreds of member worlds." "Because humans work harder than anyone else," admitted Councillor Vex of the Trading Guild. "They mine deeper, work longer hours, and find deposits that other species miss. A single human colony produces more raw materials than 5 alien colonies combined." "Then we force them to keep working," Mordun declared. "Send the fleet to their mining worlds. They will continue their operations under Council supervision." But even as he gave the order, Mordun knew it would not be that simple. Forcing someone to work was very different from having them work willingly. Angry workers could sabotage equipment, provide false information, or simply work slowly. The humans had already shown they were not afraid to say no to the Council. What would they do when the Council tried to make them work as slaves? On Earth, President Elizabeth Warren stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, alien fleets were probably moving toward human colonies. In a few days, humanity would either prove they could survive on their own, or they would be crushed by forces beyond their understanding. "We've made our choice," she said to her empty office. "Now we live with the consequences." Outside her window, the stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter, as if they were winking at her. Humanity had thrown down the gauntlet, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they fought for their freedom. 3 months had passed since humanity cut all ties with the Galactic Council. The effects were already showing across the galaxy, and they were worse than anyone had imagined. On the industrial world of Mechanicus 7, Unit Prime 77 walked through silent factory floors that should have been buzzing with activity. Massive assembly lines stood still, their robotic arms frozen in place. The conveyor belts that once carried finished products now collected dust. Report. Unit Prime 77 commanded to his subordinate, Unit 442. Production has dropped to 26.4% of normal capacity. Unit 442 replied in the flat mechanical voice all robots used. Raw material supplies are critically low. Iron reserves will be depleted in 14 days. Rare earth elements are already gone. Unit Prime 77's optical sensors dimmed as he processed this information. The mechanical syndicate had built their entire civilization around mass production. Their robot workers could build anything, but only if they had the materials to work with. And those materials came from human mining colonies. What about alternative suppliers? Unit Prime 77 asked. Negative. Other species mine at 18.3% efficiency compared to humans. Their extraction methods are primitive and slow. Even if we combined all non-human mining operations, we could only replace 31.7% of human output. Across the galaxy, Captain Steve Carter commanded the Human Defense Station Omega Point. Through the large windows of the command center, he could see Council mining ships approaching the edge of human space. They moved slowly, their hulls scarred from years of use. Major Davis, Steve called to his tactical officer. How many ships are we looking at? Major Helen Davis studied her sensor readings. 12 mining vessels, Captain. 2 escort ships. They're broadcasting on the standard diplomatic frequency. Let me hear it. The message crackled through the speakers. It was in the universal trade language that most species used for business. This is Mining Captain Vorth of the Resource Collective. We request permission to resume operations in the Titan asteroid belt. We offer fair compensation for mining rights. Steve almost laughed. Fair compensation? 3 months ago they thought they owned everything out here. Now they're asking permission. Helen looked concerned. Should we let them through, sir? Those mining ships aren't military vessels. They're just trying to do their jobs. Steve shook his head. Orders are orders. No council ships in human space, period. Send them the standard reply. The message went out on all frequencies. Council vessels, you are in violation of human territorial boundaries. Turn around immediately or you will be fired upon. There was a long pause before the reply came back. Please reconsider. Our homeworld needs these materials. Millions of beings will suffer without them. Steve felt a pang of guilt, but he pushed it down. The Council had brought this on themselves when they tried to force humanity into submission. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. Leave human space now. Meanwhile, in the deepest parts of space, the Hive Mind Collective was facing a crisis unlike anything in their long history. Queen Voice Zarathis floated in the center of her massive bioship, surrounded by thousands of smaller creatures that made up her extended consciousness. Her ship was dying. The living vessel needed special nutrients to maintain its organic hull and nervous system. These nutrients came from plants that only grew on human agricultural worlds. Without them, the bioship's flesh was beginning to rot and its neural networks were failing. My queen, buzzed one of her worker drones. 3 more ships have gone, silent in the outer rim. Their biological systems have shut down completely. Zarathis sent out a telepathic call to her remaining ship children. She could feel their pain as their living hulls slowly deteriorated. Some were trying to find substitute nutrients from other species, but nothing worked as well as human biosupplements. Send another message to the human leaders, she commanded. Offer them anything they want. Technology, territory, tribute. We must have those agricultural supplies. But the humans were not answering council messages anymore. Every attempt at communication was met with silence or automated responses, telling them to stay away from human space. On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Tony Walker patrolled the border between human and council territory in his stealth. ship UHS Shadow. His job was to watch Council fleet movements and report back to Earth. What he saw through his ship's sensors worried him greatly. Captain Green, he called to his intelligence officer. Take a look at this. Council fleet movements for the past week. Captain Rachel Green studied the data on her screen. Red dots showed the positions of various alien fleets. Most were moving toward human space, but they were not coordinating their movements like a military force should. They're scattered, Rachel observed. No unified command structure. Some fleets are moving toward our mining colonies, others toward our trade routes. A few seem to be heading back to their home systems. Tony nodded. My guess is they can't coordinate properly without their quantum crystal communication network. Each fleet commander is making decisions on their own. That could work in our favor, Rachel said. A divided enemy is easier to defeat than a united one. But Tony was not so sure. Desperate enemies could be just as dangerous as organized ones, maybe more so. Back on the Council homeworld, emergency sessions were being held around the clock. The great chamber that had once been filled with confident representatives now echoed with angry voices and desperate pleas. The Traders Guild representative, a slug-like creature named Merchant Prime Glex, slid across the floor to address the assembly. The economic situation is catastrophic, he announced. Trade routes are collapsing without human goods to transport. 17 worlds are reporting severe shortages. Food riots have broken out on 3 systems. High Chancellor Morden looked older than his many years. The stress of the crisis was wearing on him, and his normally perfect appearance was beginning to show cracks. What about our military response? Where are the fleets I ordered to human space? Fleet Commander Kethvar stepped forward. He was a proud warrior from a species that valued honor above all else, but even he looked defeated. My lord, our fleets are experiencing coordination problems. Without quantum crystal communications, each ship group is operating independently. Some have engaged human defenses and been repelled. Others have not reached their targets yet. Repelled? Morden's voice rose in disbelief. How can primitive human ships repel our advanced warships? Kethvar looked uncomfortable. It appears that human weapons are more effective than our intelligence suggested. Their kinetic projectiles can penetrate our energy shields, and their nuclear warheads cause significant damage to our hulls. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council had always assumed their energy-based weapons and shields made them superior to any species that still used physical projectiles. They were learning too late that they had been wrong. How long before our colonies start surrendering to human demands? Asked Councillor Vex of the Scientific Consortium. Nobody wanted to answer that question, but they all knew the truth. Some worlds were already sending secret messages to human leaders, asking for separate peace deals. The Great Galactic Council that had ruled for 3,000 years was falling apart, and it had only taken 3 months, all because one stubborn species had dared to say no. The war vote passed by the smallest margin in Galactic Council history. Out of 347 member species, only 179 voted to authorize military action against humanity. The rest either voted against the war or refused to participate at all. Fleet Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching as ships from 47 different species assembled around him. It was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history, but Kethvar felt no confidence in victory. Admiral, said his tactical officer, Commander Zilnoth. The fleet is ready. 2,147 ships from the core worlds, 1,203 from the Outer Rim species, and 634 support vessels. Kethvar nodded but did not feel impressed by the numbers. Half of these ships were running on emergency power because they could not get replacement parts. Their crews were hungry because food shipments from human colonies had stopped. Many captains had already sent private messages asking when this war would end so they could go home. What about the humans? Kethvar asked. How many ships do they have? Intelligence reports 127 military vessels in total, sir. Their largest ship is only half the size of our smallest battleship. The numbers should have made Kethvar feel better, but they did not. Human ships were small, but they were fast and deadly. In the past 3 months, Council forces had lost 18 ships to human attacks. The humans had lost only 2. Meanwhile, on the human space station Liberty, Admiral Peter Clark was having his own war council. Around the table sat the best military minds humanity had to offer. The mood was tense, but determined. "They're coming," said Intelligence Director Monica Rodriguez. "Our long-range sensors picked up their fleet movements 2 days ago. 4,000-plus ships heading straight for Earth." Captain Sandra Johnson looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "We're outnumbered 30-1. Our only advantage is that they have to come through the Sol system's asteroid belt to reach Earth." Admiral Clark smiled grimly. "Then that's where we'll make our stand. How are the preparations going?" "The asteroid mining stations have been converted to weapons platforms," reported Colonel Gary Thompson. "We've got nuclear mines scattered throughout the belt, and our stealth ships are already in position." Dr. Sandra Johnson had been working around the clock for weeks, and her latest discovery would shock the galaxy. She sat in her laboratory aboard the research station New Horizon, staring at data that seemed impossible. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the calculations again. But the numbers did not lie. She activated the communication system and sent an encrypted message to Admiral Clark. "Peter, you need to see this immediately. I've been analyzing captured Council technology, and I found something incredible." Within an hour, Admiral Clark was standing in her lab, looking at the same data that had amazed her. "Explain it to me, Sandra." "The Council has been lying to the galaxy for thousands of years," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "They haven't been helping species advance, they've been holding them back." She pulled up a holographic display showing the technological development of various species over time. "Look at this pattern. Every species follows the same curve. They develop naturally until they join the Council. Then their advancement slows to almost nothing." Admiral Clark studied the graphs. "Are you saying they're deliberately keeping other species primitive?" "Not primitive. Dependent. They give each species just enough technology to be useful, but never enough to be independent. It's the perfect system of control." Clark felt anger rising in his chest. "How do you know this?" "Because I compared their technology to ours. We've been developing on our own for our entire history. In some areas, we're already more advanced than species that have been in the Council for centuries." Sandra activated another display showing weapon comparisons. "Their energy shields are designed to stop energy weapons, but they're useless against kinetic projectiles. Their hull materials are light and flexible, but they can't withstand the impact of a simple steel projectile moving at high speed. Why? Would they design their defenses to be weak against physical weapons? Because no Council species uses physical weapons anymore. They've all been convinced that energy weapons are superior, but we know better because we never stopped fighting each other and never stopped innovating." Across the galaxy, the truth was starting to spread. Commander Ashley Brown had been broadcasting Sandra's discoveries on all frequencies, and the reaction was immediate and explosive. On the mining world of Kepler 9, the Vorthak workers stopped their digging and looked up at the sky. For the first time in 300 years, they were asking questions about why they needed Council permission to improve their mining equipment. The Crystalline Dominion's scientists were running their own tests, comparing their technology to human designs. What they found made them furious. Their ancestors had developed advanced crystal technology centuries ago, but the Council had convinced them to abandon it in favor of standardized energy systems. On 43 different worlds, revolutionary movements were forming. Species that had been loyal Council members for millennia were suddenly demanding independence. Some were asking for human alliance, others just wanted to be left alone to develop their own technology. The Council's response was swift and brutal. Military forces were deployed to 12 rebel worlds. The official announcement claimed these were peacekeeping operations to restore order, but everyone knew the truth. The Council was using force to maintain control. This only made the situation worse. More species joined the rebellion, and several Council members formally withdrew their support for the war against humanity. High Chancellor Morden stood in his private chambers, looking out at the capital city of Nexus Prime. Smoke rose from several districts where riots had broken out. His own people were turning against him. "My lord," said his aide, a nervous creature that looked like a walking mushroom. "The military commanders are asking for new orders. Several species have withdrawn. Their ships from the human campaign." Morden closed his 6 eyes and tried to think. Everything was falling apart. The economic crisis, the military failures, the rebellions, and now his own authority was being questioned. "How many ships do we still have heading for human space?" "Approximately 2,100, my lord. But some fleet commanders are requesting permission to return home to deal with local unrest." "Denied. The human problem must be solved before we can address anything else. If we can force them to surrender, the other species will fall back in line." But even as he gave the order, Morden knew he was wrong. The humans had done more than reject council membership. They had shown the entire galaxy that independence was possible. Even if humanity was destroyed tomorrow, the idea of freedom would live on. The age of council dominance was ending, and Morden was powerless to stop it. All because one stubborn species had refused to bow down and accept their assigned place in the galactic order. The final battle was coming, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the outcome was uncertain. The Battle of Sol lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, the largest military force in galactic history lay scattered in pieces across the asteroid belt. Of the 2,100 council ships that had entered human space, fewer than 300 escaped to tell the tale. Admiral Peter Clark stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the cleanup crews collect debris from destroyed alien vessels. The victory should have felt glorious, but Peter only felt sad. So many lives lost because the Council could not accept that one species wanted to be free. "Admiral," said Captain Nick Davis as he approached, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different Council fleets. They're asking for safe passage back to their home systems." Peter nodded. "Grant it. We're not conquerors. Let them go home to their families." The battle had ended not because humans were better fighters, but because the Council fleet had fallen apart from within. When the shooting started, many alien captains realized they were fighting for a cause they no longer believed in. Some ships had simply turned around and left. Others had stopped fighting and waited for the battle to end. Fleet Admiral Kethvar had been among the survivors. His flagship limped away from Sol system with its hull cracked and its crew demoralized. He sent a final message to the Galactic Council before disappearing into deep space. "The humans fight like demons, but they show mercy like angels. Perhaps we chose the wrong enemy." 6 months after the failed invasion, Captain Monica Rodriguez landed her diplomatic shuttle on the planet Vorthon Prime. It was the first time a human had visited a former Council world as an official representative. The Vorthak people lined the streets to see her arrive. They were tall, four-legged beings with silver skin that reflected sunlight like mirrors. Many carried signs written in their own language, but translated to basic galactic script. "Thank you, humans," and "freedom." For all species, President Zalkar of the newly independent Vorthak Republic met Monica at the landing pad. He was old by his species standards, but his 3 eyes sparkled with excitement. "Welcome, Ambassador Rodriguez," he said in careful human language. "We have much to discuss." The negotiations lasted 3 days. By the end, humanity had its first formal alliance with a former Council species. The Vorthak offered their advanced mining equipment in exchange for human agricultural products and quantum crystals. More importantly, they agreed to share their historical records about the Council's early years. What those records revealed changed everything. Dr. Linda Wilson sat in her research facility on Mars, reading through thousands of years of alien documents. The truth was worse than anyone had imagined. The Council wasn't always evil, she explained to President Jennifer Adams during their weekly video call. 3,000 years ago, they really were trying to help younger species, but somewhere along the way, they became addicted to control. "How did it happen?" President Adams asked. "Fear," Linda replied. "They were afraid that if they let species develop independently, someone might become powerful enough to challenge them. so they started limiting technology transfers. Then they began actively suppressing innovation. Eventually, it became a system designed to keep everyone else weak. President Adams felt sick. How many species could have advanced beyond their current level? All of them. Every single species in the galaxy has been held back for centuries. The medical advances alone could have saved billions of lives. While humans were learning the truth about the Council's past, the galaxy was rapidly changing. On 47 different worlds, former Council species were declaring independence. Some formed small alliances with their neighbors. Others chose to go it alone like humanity had done. The Council itself was dying. High Chancellor Mordun had fled Nexus Prime when his own guards refused to protect him. The Great Chamber, where representatives had once debated galactic policy, now stood empty except for a few cleaning robots. Engineer Carlos Martinez worked aboard the human space station Olympus, which had become an unofficial meeting place for independent species. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked there every day, their crews eager to trade and share information. "It's amazing," Carlos told his friend, technician Jeff Turner, as they watched a crystalline Dominion vessel dock next to a mechanical syndicate transport. 6 months ago, these species couldn't talk to each other without Council permission. Now they're working together on joint projects. Jeff nodded as he monitored the docking procedure. "I heard the crystal people and the machines are developing a new type of communication system, something that doesn't need quantum crystals at all. Good for them. Competition breeds innovation." In the station's main conference room, Ambassador Jeff Turner was hosting the first meeting of what would become the Independent Systems Alliance. Representatives from 37 species sat around a circular table, each speaking as equals. "We are not here to recreate the Council," Jeff announced to the assembled delegates. "We're here to build something better, a loose confederation based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation." The Ethereal Collective's representative, a being of pure thought called Wisdom Singer Erun, spoke in harmonious tones. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will not become the new dominant power?" Jeff smiled. "None at all. If we start acting like the Council, then you should leave and find better partners. That's the whole point. Nobody gets to control anyone else anymore." The negotiations took weeks, but eventually the Alliance Charter was signed. It established basic principles: voluntary membership, free trade, shared scientific research, and mutual defense against aggressive empires. Any species could join, and any species could leave whenever they wanted. The galaxy had fundamentally changed. Instead of one massive empire controlling everything, there were now hundreds of independent worlds and dozens of small alliances. Trade flourished as species rediscovered technologies they had forgotten. Scientific advancement accelerated as researchers shared discoveries freely. Not everyone was happy with the new order. Some former Council species tried to create their own mini-empires, but they found few willing subjects. The idea of independence had spread too far to be contained. President Jennifer Adams stood in the White House Rose Garden, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, human ships were exploring new star systems and making contact with species that had never heard of Earth. Humanity's children were spreading across the galaxy, carrying with them the simple but revolutionary idea that every species deserved to be free. "We did it," she whispered to the stars. "We actually did it. The age of enforced unity was over. The age of chosen cooperation had begun. And it all started because one stubborn species had looked at the most powerful empire in the galaxy and said a simple word: no. The galaxy would never be the same again, and that was exactly what humanity had hoped for.